Welcome to episode 3 of the 10 tutorial level. This time we're going to make some proper gameplay by adding triggers, traps, and enemies. We'll also take a look at making a sloped corridor. We created a portal between these two rooms. If we want to create doors, and by doors I mean physical, literal doors between rooms, it's a good idea to put them on portals. So go into geometry mode. In the search, I'm just going to put door. It'll probably come up with trapdoor, but it's brought us into roughly the right area of the WOD. Scroll down a little bit and click on door type 1. Add it to this square. Make sure that we're in the dome room, the new room here, and make sure the door is facing this direction. It's basically on this side of the square. Go to door type 2 and then add it on the next one. The reason we've got two different door types here is just that they have different animations. The one on the left is going to open out towards the left, and the one on the right is going to open out towards the right. The room doesn't really look right because we can see right through, so we just want to pull down the ceiling, and we'll need to retexture this, so I'm just going to divide the walls. We can't actually bring up a line from the bottom this time. It's not a full wall that goes from ceiling down to the floor. If you press the number 1 key, you'll notice that this is highlighted. You can only bring down lines from the ceiling in this case. If we click 1 and try and bring it down, it will also bring down the whole block. That's because this is actually line 1 from the ceiling. So we need to click number 2 and bring down a line. We'll texture that a bit later on. Let's concentrate on triggers first. So the doors are in the right place. Let's zoom out and go back into this room. In general, you can think of triggers in two ways. There are classic triggers. The reason they're called classic triggers is because these are the exact same triggers that have always been used in the level editor, and these actually form some of the most common ones and the simplest ones. There are also what are called volume triggers, and that's a special feature of 10. We're going to come to these later in the tutorial level, so don't worry for now, but these will allow you to do some really cool, complex things. Remember that I rearranged the windows, so you just need to find where your classic triggers are. For me, they're down here. And it will open this window. There's nothing there because we haven't actually set any triggers yet. Select the door on the left. The door is actually physically in the other room, but you can select the object from wherever you are in the level. While it's still selected, I'm going to select these squares here. Click the plus, add trigger, and it will give you a few options. Trigger type, we're going to just leave it at trigger. I'll explain what that means in a second. What object? It's an object because it's a door, which counts as an object. The actual physical object that's been selected is just here. There's not actually anything we need to do. Everything is just selected as we want it, and click OK. Press the escape key and you'll see that the whole floor here has turned purple. So what classic triggers do is that they go all the way from the floor to the ceiling. And what it means is it's invisible, but the trigger actually runs all the way from floor to ceiling. So in this case, whenever Lara crosses any of that point, it's going to trigger the door. So let's say you're jumping from here, you don't actually touch the floor here, it's going to trigger as soon as she hits the trigger on the side. I've added it to these 8 squares just in case Lara comes around the corner and I want her to trigger the door, even if she just comes across over this ledge. But we've only put a trigger for the first door. So we want to click the other door. We're going to select exactly the same squares, go down to the plus here, click add trigger, do the same thing and click OK. But if we click on any of these squares here, it tells you in the classic triggers box what triggers are on that square. And we notice we've got a trigger for door type 1 and a trigger for door type 2. One reason we wanted to put these objects at the edge of this room, so basically on the portal, is if we do that with doors somewhere else, there's actually an invisible block of collision here. But if we put them on a portal, so at the very edge of the room next to the portal, we want to put them in the room that Lara isn't actually in yet. And that will remove any kind of collision from the doors that we don't want. I think we need a little bit more visual flair. So in this room, in our first room, we're actually going to add some flames on the walls. Flames you're going to be using a lot. You can use them just for decorative features, but they're also good for puzzles and gameplay. And later on in the tutorial, we're going to look at how to use flames in puzzles. For now, we want to put some wall torches on each of these columns, and that's where the flames will be. So if we go down to the static objects and click static 2, you've got a nice wall torch. So let's add one here. Lift it up a fair bit, maybe just to about there. This is where these lines can come in handy. They serve as a bit of a visual reference. Let's add another one here. And to make sure it's exactly the same height, it's just above the line. I'm going to copy and paste and put one here, but it's in the wrong position, so I need to twirl it around, bring it up just above the line, copy and paste, and put one here. Now we want to find an actual flame, and a flame is an object. If we go to the search function here, just type in flame, and flame emitter will come up. There's actually 3 flame emitters, flame emitter 2 and flame emitter 3. For these wall torches, we want flame emitter 2, and this is what's called a null mesh. Let's just put it on the square in front of the wall torch here, and you'll see it in the editor, but in game, it won't look like this. It might be totally invisible, it might be a flame, it might be something else, depending on what it's actually supposed to do. For flame emitter 2, imagine that the actual flame is at the thickest part of this triangle, this pyramid. So we want to twist it around there, and then pull it up to around about there, where the top of the torch is. Let's copy and paste it and put it here, but we still need to raise it up. The thing is though, we actually have to trigger flames. They're not just going to appear out of nowhere. So for each flame emitter, just click on it. And this time I want them to already be burning when we start the level. So we want to put it underneath Lara where she is. Lara's kind of in the middle, so it makes sense just to put the trigger here. So select all of those 4 tiles, go down to the plus here, and we're just going to click OK. Even though the trigger is actually on all 4 squares, it doesn't mean 4 separate triggers. It's actually just one. So we're going to do it with the other flame emitters. Just deselect the floor, press escape, and then select the flame emitter, then the floor, then add the trigger. And here's a little shortcut actually. We don't need to deselect the floor every time. We can just keep adding triggers. So keep it selected, click the next flame emitter, and then just go straight down to plus, add, and it will do it automatically. So it's another time-saving tip. Do it with the remaining one. Before we go and play our level and just see what we did, the results of our hard work, just want to check the textures again. Go into Face Edit, and you'll notice because we had to lower down the ceiling in the other room, we have to go back in this room and retexture things. And then we're ready to test the level out. So the same thing as what we did before, go up to this play icon, build level and play. So we see as soon as the level loads, we've already triggered the flame emitters. Let's just go and take a look. I think for me, the flames are a little bit too low. So that tells me when we go back to the editor, we just want to raise the flame emitters slightly so it looks a bit better on the torches. Let's check out the trigger. I learned that we need to just adjust the flame emitter. So we're going to go back into this room, select the flame emitter. We could move it up, but it's going to move it up by about half a click. That might be a little bit too much. If we hold down Control, we can just do a little bit of an increment. Let's expand our level a little bit so we can create some new gameplay. For this, I'm feeling a little bit on the lazy side, so I'm just going to copy this room and paste it next to it. We're going to copy our second room, so just make sure that we're in it. Double click in it if you're not already. We'll go down to this option here, which is Duplicate Rooms. Click. Nothing happens here, but if we go to the 2D view and scroll up to where the level is, what it's actually done is it's copied this room in exactly the same place. If you hold the left mouse button and drag across, you'll notice that we're dragging the new copied room and it's not connected to the rest of the level. What we're going to do is put it up here, exactly in line with the rest of the level. And to connect it to the previous room, we're going to go to the top left, select the wall here where the door will be, and then click this icon here, Add Portal. You'll notice it goes black. If you click in the other room, you'll notice it's also added a portal here. One thing to add for future reference, sometimes if we create a new room like this that's unconnected to the rest of the level, we just need to make sure that it actually lines up in terms of its height. If we click on either of these rooms, go down to the bottom, you'll notice it says floor 0, ceiling 16. That basically says the lowest point of this room is at level 0 and the highest point is at 16. Notice the column on the right. 0 is about in the middle, so you can actually go a long way below and a long way up. Both of these rooms are at the same level anyway, but if you're not sure where they are, you can double click on a room and it will add a little icon. Let's double click on this one and add another. And it shows room 0, room 1 here, which correspond to these new two numbers. It will show you exactly whether they line up or not. Let's go into our new room, click on it and go to geometry mode. And what it's done is it's copied everything. It's copied textures, objects, lighting. I do actually want to keep these doors. So we have a second set of doors for Lara to go through. But this time, instead of just adding a trigger in front of it, I want her to push a switch to open the doors. So let's place a switch first. We're going to place a switch for those doors in this corner here. Go to the object menu and type in switch. There are two types in the WOD at the moment. We want to use switch type 2 though. Go to that one and add it to the square. It's in the wrong place, so we just want to rotate it round. And then when Lara pushes this switch, then we want the doors to open. To do this, we want to place a trigger for the switch itself first. Click on the switch, then the block in front of it, and then add a trigger here. Trigger type now says switch. What this means is whatever you then put on top of this trigger, what's called a stacked trigger, the switch will then activate it and only the switch will activate it. Just click OK. Then we put on top of this trigger anything that we want to happen when the switch is pushed. So just find the doors and add a trigger, a normal trigger for each of them. So you should end up with 3 triggers on this square. A switch trigger, and that basically tells the engine nothing will happen on this square until the switch is pushed. And then 1 trigger for door type 1 and 1 trigger for door type 2. One thing we need to do to the switch, make sure that Lara plays the right animation. There are lots of different types of switches, and we actually have to change the settings of the switch slightly to make her play the right animation. We want to click on the object and then click the O key on the keyboard. This brings up a little menu. There's a box here called OCB, which stands for Object Code Bit. We can put numbers in here, and we can do this for lots of movable objects, and it changes their behavior. In this case, to make sure that Lara plays the right animation, we're going to enter the number 3 into this. Click OK. To find out more about OCBs and how they relate to particular objects and what you can do with them, even special effects, different behavior that you can make happen with enemies and objects, check out the Tomb Engine website. Go back into our copied room. And I don't want this hidden corridor anymore in this room. So let's change the dimensions. Go to crop room, and then we'll make the left side 3 blocks smaller. Click OK. And it will remove that part of the room. It may sometimes leave some things in there that you want to delete. In this case, a medipack. And also the light. I also want to remove the Uzi ammo that was in here. I think she's got enough already. Let's add some enemies to this room. Underneath where the light shaft is, I'm going to select the 4 blocks on the floor and I'm going to raise them by 4 clicks. Go into the Objects menu and find Baddie 1. Place 1 here and place another one next to them. What we're going to do is once Lara comes in these doors, we're going to trigger these enemies. And what we don't want to do is trigger them so that they appear out of thin air. And that's why we've got these blocks. So it seems as if they're already behind and then they're going to run around and attack Lara. To trigger these enemies, click on one of them. I'm going to choose these 2 tiles in front of the doors. Make sure we're in classic triggers and click plus. And then click on the other enemy and add a trigger. And so they're both going to get triggered at the same time. We can also make it so that an enemy drops an item once they've been killed. And that's simple. Let's search for ammo. And I'm going to put some Uzi ammo underneath one of these baddies. I'll just put it there. So it's on the floor, but actually when the game starts, the baddie will automatically have picked it up. And once the baddie's been killed, it will drop that item wherever the baddie goes. Sometimes we don't want the enemies to be able to go everywhere, and that's for a couple of reasons. In this room, we've got some objects on these squares, and sometimes the baddies can get a bit stuck on them, and so I don't want them to go anywhere near them. Since these objects take up a lot of these squares, I'm going to stop the baddies from actually going on them. To do that, we need to select the squares. So for now, I'm going to select these two. And then we go up to this grey square here, which says Set Box Sector Property. A box is an area of the map where an enemy can't go. It automatically applies to most enemies. I'm going to add them onto the other squares. It doesn't apply to enemies that fly, however, and there are some enemies where it just doesn't have an effect. You just have to do some trial and error. Another reason for adding these grey squares, these boxes, is if you don't want an enemy to progress further on into a level or to enter a particular room, in which case, at the edge of the room, you can actually just add a box there and it won't go further than this point. I'm not going to add one here just by clicking the box again. And before we move on, I'm just going to make sure that the textures look right in this room. I need to segment this wall, for instance. So we've added some enemies. What I'd like to do now is add a trap. And we're going to add the typical Tomb Raider trap, the rolling ball. To do this, let's create a new room. We're going to do it a slightly different way just to demonstrate it. Select the 2 bits of wall at the top of the room. You can either do it in geometry mode by selecting it yourself or the walls on the 2D map. Before we used Portal Digger. Instead, this time we're going to go up to Rooms and then go to New Room, and then it gives you a list of options. So you've got New Room, up, down, left, right, etc. What the up, down, left, right means depends on what direction you're going on the 2D map. Here, it's at the top of the screen, and that correlates to New Room Front. New Room Back would be in the opposite direction. New Room Up is vertical. New Room Down is vertical, but in the other way, downwards. And then left and right would be literally left and right of this room. So here we just want to make it go straight forward, so we're going to click New Room Front. And unlike with Portal Digger, it doesn't allow you to decide exactly how long you want it to be. It just gives you a default length. That's okay, we can always resize it. In this case, I'm just going to keep it the same size. This is kind of perfect for what we want. And for a rolling ball to work, it needs to go down a slope. So we're going to create a sloped room. First of all, let's lower it. I think it's a bit tall. So select the ceiling squares and pull it down to about that height. And this is actually 8 clicks tall. How do I know? Well, you can go down to the bottom of the screen and you can see here it says floor 0 and ceiling 8, so that we know this is 8 clicks tall. You can, if you want to look at a particular square, if you click on it and go down, it adds something here and it shows you the Y value. 0 is the lowest level of where it is in the room, and 8 is the highest level. To create a sloped room, select all of the tiles at the bottom except the first set and the last 2. Click on them until the arrows are pointing in this direction, and then pull up by 2 clicks. Remember, if it's more than 2 clicks, then Lara's just going to slide down, but we want her to be able to walk up this. Then have a look at the ceiling and do the same thing. Pull it up by 2 clicks. And so to create a sloped room, we can then not select the first row, but select all of the others, and this time including the end, and pull it up by 2 clicks, and the same with the ceiling. We want the rolling balls to drop out of around about here, so they can go all the way down the slope, and Lara will then have to dodge them in order to get to the top. Select these 2 on the ceiling, pull it up quite a bit. I'm just going to flatten the ceiling, and what we can do to do that is go to Transform, Down, Flatten Ceiling, and it makes it flat. This can sometimes make it easier with texturing. Let's place the rolling balls. Go to the Objects menu and just type in Rolling, and it should find it. Let's put one on each square. Select one of them and raise it all the way to the top, and then select the other and just raise it above the gap here. So when Lara triggers them, They will trigger at the same time, but this one will fall down first and then that one second. So in theory, she can run around the rolling balls. Let's place a trigger for them. So select one of the rolling balls. I'm going to put it on the second bit of the slope. That way Lara's gone up a little bit. She's teased into the corridor slowly, but then they're triggered. Add a normal trigger. Select the other rolling ball and add a trigger. To add a bit of drama, I'm going to add a music track. 10 and Tomb Editor, they automatically come with some music tracks. These are taken from Tomb Raider 4. You can, of course, use any music track you like, but for us, we're just going to use one that's already there. To find where they are, go to the Tomb Editor folder, and then find your project. So in this case, Playable Tutorial Level. Then go to Engine, and then Audio, and you can put your music for your project in this folder here. These audio files are numbered, but you can actually give your audio files a name if you like. We're going to use audio file 2. And I think that fits quite nicely if we imagine Lara stepping on a trigger for some rolling balls. Go back to Tomb Editor, select the same 2 squares where we're going to trigger the rolling balls, and let's add another trigger. Here we actually haven't selected anything first, so we need to put something ourselves into these boxes. We're just going to have a perfectly normal trigger, so it's Lara doing the triggering. In terms of what, we're going to go down to Play Audio. The next field is called Parameters, and here we want to enter the number of the audio file. So in this case, it's 002. If you have an audio file that has a different name, it's made up of words, you actually have to use a volume trigger for those, but we're going to get to that later. And then click OK. So that we can see here in the classic triggers, both rolling balls are going to trigger, and the audio file at exactly the same time. So we've got all of the objects and triggers ready in the room, so the last thing we're going to do is texture it. Because it's sloped, however, it's a little bit trickier than with a flat room like we've had before. You could create lines on the walls, just like we did before. Like this, but we would continue. And this is fine. Let's say if you've got brick textures and you want to place them on the walls so that they appear like this, in a straight line across. But let's imagine we want to tilt these textures a bit so that they follow the direction of the hall. Bricks probably wouldn't do that. That's not how you lay bricks. But you might have some wallpaper, a bit like you find in some houses on the staircases. The wallpaper follows the same angle as the staircase. So in this case, let's do something similar. Now you can angle these lines yourself if you want to. To do that, click on the wall. And then like we did with the floor to bring up an arrow, you can also do the same thing on the wall. Here, notice that the arrows are pointing towards a particular corner. And so we know that if we bring it up or down, and you could do it like that, for instance, and then bring it down to the middle of the room, and then repeat with each of the wall tiles. That's fine, but it could take a while. Let's undo that. For this, I'm going to select the wall on the 2D map on the left, and then go to Transform, and have a look at the bottom. These are shortcuts for gridding the walls, for segmenting them. You can grid them into squares like we've done before, and you can choose whether you want to do it as 3 squares or 5 squares. Let me just show you what that looks like. Here's 3 squares. So it's divided the whole wall into 1, 2, 3 sets of squares. I mean, these are far too big. You would have to do a lot of changing to make them look right. You could do grid walls in 5 squares. Okay, it's helped you out a little bit. You probably need to do some fixing a bit. In this case though, I want to not use the squares, but just grid the walls in a different way. Click grid walls in 3. What it does in this case is it takes the angle of the room and then grids the walls like that. So this is already looking quite nice. Probably don't need it to be 3 though. I'm just going to drag down the one from the bottom and then drag down the one from the top so it's exactly in the middle of the room. And there you go. Look how much time we saved. The wall is almost ready. The only bit that we need to change is above here with the boulders. Press 1. We know that this is line 1 from the top. 2. This is line 2. So I'm just going to click 3 and pull down a line to about there, and then 4 to do another one. Repeat the process with the other side of the room. I'm going to leave this wall because we're going to connect a room there anyway, but this one, let's bring down some lines. In terms of texturing the room, just to show you how it would work in this case. So let's imagine the texture on the wall follows the hall upwards. In the texture set, I'm going to scroll down until I find these textures here, and this will highlight what we need to do next. Select the first one, make sure face edit mode is on, and just add it to the bottom row. And you can see what it does. It thinks you want to do what we normally do, which is that the editor will help you out in a way and naturally cut the texture so it stays vertical but fits nicely into the box. The problem is we don't actually want that. We want the texture to twist slightly so that it follows the room. And this is where we need to uncheck this thing here. So if you're in face edit mode, it should be the bottom icon and it's called fix texture coordinates. Uncheck that and then add the texture onto this row. And there you go, it twists naturally so it fits the contours of the hallway. Let's do the same on the other side. And then above it, I'm going to add the texture which is to the right and do the same thing. Here though, above the rolling balls, we've actually got normal straight lines. So I'm just going to click fix texture coordinates back on and then add some textures here. I'm just going to add the same ones. Finish texturing the room to your liking. Changing the ambient light of the room, perhaps adding a sun bulb and some point lights. Here at the top where the boulders emerge from, we want to imagine this is some kind of dark recess. And here is a new light bulb type, and it's a shadow bulb. So go down to shadow, place it on the ceiling. At least that's what I wanted, but actually it's gone on the floor. But we can raise it up. And this is the opposite of a point light, in that instead of projecting light, it basically projects black. Notice that its intensity is at -0.5. It's too big, I think. I want some of the light from the corridor just to go up into this alcove slightly. So I think that's better. In terms of its color and intensity, it's okay, but let's move it into the middle there. And I'm just going to increase the inside just so it covers all of the top. Nice transition from light in the corridor up to darkness. You can use shadow bulbs to create some really nice dark corners at the edges of the rooms, or if you want Lara to start using her flares, then you can use them in those places. So before we test our gameplay, I'm going to see if there are any untextured faces that I've forgotten. So go to textures, search textures, make sure that untextured or default texture is selected, and I'm going to deselect this because I want to check the whole level. New search. Okay, there are two sectors. Let's see where they are. Just click on them. Yeah, so when we connected this new room, it changed the wall a little bit in the room behind, and so I just need to texture those. All right, now we're ready to test. So notice there that she played the right animation for the switch, thanks to the OCB. Hopefully, that's opened these two doors. Indeed it has. Now we're expecting enemies to run around the corner. And remember, with one of them, we added Uzi ammo underneath. So I'm hoping that particular one has dropped the Uzi ammo. There we go. The boxes that we added earlier, this meant that they didn't climb onto these blocks, so avoided getting stuck in some of these objects. And let's try out the rolling ball. So hopefully they're going to drop down, and we'll also hear a bit of music at the same time. Okay, she died. Perhaps the balls were a little bit close to each other as well, so I can adjust that afterwards. This is why it's always good to test pretty thoroughly. I think the rolling balls were a bit close together, so I'm actually going to raise this one even more. And perhaps lower this one down slightly. So what did we do in this lesson? We learned how to place doors and flame emitters and trigger them with simple classic triggers. We learned how to copy a room and connect it to others with add portal. We triggered enemies. We added a switch. We also looked at OCBs, so object code bits, box squares to stop them getting stuck or to stop them getting into certain parts of the level. And we added a sloped hallway, learned how to texture it, and added a trap, in this case, rolling balls. We also learned how to play a music track. Still to come, big stacked hallway with some ledges, along with some climbable walls and the monkey swing, some puzzle pieces, water, and we're also going to create a current and a secret room.